Well, okay, so this is the PowerShell for DFIR. Thank you for joining us. We are the Breaking Down Security Podcast. You can find us at breakingsecurity.com, BRAKEING security.com. This is the first class in a 6-week course discussing PowerShell for blue teamers and digital forensics incident response people. And if you have any thoughts, questions, please feel free to hit up bds.podcast@gmail.com if you're watching this on YouTube. Or you can follow @BetterSafetyNet on Twitter or @BrakeSec if you have questions, comments, or concerns. Okay, that's all I have right now. Please take it away, Mick.
Okay. Hey everyone, so welcome to lesson number 1, and this is going to be a little bit of a ground foundational one, and what we're going to be covering are a couple different things. First of all, you can't have one of those presentations unless you start off with the About Me slide. So my name is Mick Douglas, and I'm the Digital Forensics Incident Response Practice Lead at Binary Defense. We are a boutique security company based out of Hudson, Ohio. And in my quote-unquote spare time, I teach SANS 504 hacker techniques and incident response, which is a fun class. I see Mr. Brake nodding and like doing the heavy metal, like, yeah. I'll be teaching here a couple times in the remainder of the year. And if you're really feeling squirrely, you can join me in Oslo, Norway next next year. That'd be kind of cool. Never been to Norway, so it can be your first time there too. Or if it's not, you can show me around town. So one thing that I want to talk about a bit though is this is not a SANS class, even though I'm a SANS instructor. You can clearly see these are pretty generic looking slides. The labs that we're going to be doing throughout the next couple weeks are going to be pretty janky. Some of them deliberately so, just because I want to expose you to the rough edges of PowerShell and where it works and what doesn't work, and just so that you can actually basically get your hands bloodied and learn how to learn with this sort of framework that PowerShell gives us. One of the things that makes me really sad is that pretty quickly the pen testers and the red teamers took over PowerShell. And I'll be honest, I teach a class on pen testing with PowerShell, and it's a fun class, but I'm doing this to kind of pay off a karmic debt. I think that there's too many people that are abusing PowerShell and not using it to its good advantages. We're going to be going over the pickerel method, which is the SANS approach to handling incident response. Today, we're going to be focused a lot on the preparation phases and getting you familiar with PowerShell, what you can do with it, and how to play around with it. Lessons learned, we're probably not going to be using that a whole lot because I don't know how PowerShell would help you learn lessons from an incident response. But in the different letters, the pickerel, P is for prepare, which is probably the most important phase of incident response. We're going to be spending an inordinate amount of time, though, on identify. Identify is probably where PowerShell is most underutilized, in my opinion. One of the things that we do from time to time at Binary Defense is hunt teaming exercises, and it really makes me sad when people think that you need to have the Hackatron 5000 or something in order to see what's going on in the network. So identification is something we will be focusing a lot on. Containment, the C in pickerel, is something that PowerShell does pretty neatly, and I'll be sharing with you some pretty cool scripts that I've got developing. Eradication and recovery are things that PowerShell can definitely help with too. So this is our class. If you have questions, if you have any comments, feel free to hit me up via Slack, via Twitter. I'm at BetterSafetyNet. Braden gave you Bryan gave the my bad, dude. Gave the Gmail for that. So reach out to us. I want to make this class be for you. Also, I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone else. My opinions are my own. I want to be very forthright. There's going to be some forensics people out there who watch these videos and are going to say, Mick, what you're doing is horrible. It will muddy up the system. I hear you. I believe you, and I'm sorry for that. Next week, we're going to talk about how to help avoid that a little bit. But just for now, we're going to kind of set the table, as it were. But I realize that what we're going to be talking about will muddy up a system. So if you're looking for forensically pure things, this might not be necessarily the best way to go, but it is low cost and it works really well. If this pisses off vendors, good. Don't care. Quite frankly, a lot of the vendors that are operating in this space are charging inordinate amounts of money for products that work so-so. And I don't care if you get upset. As it says there on the text there, go soak your head. I simply don't care. One other thing to point out is that you don't have to use PowerShell for everything. If you become a one-trick pony, you look like these guys. It's dumb. You know, just because you have a tool doesn't mean that you have to use it. Although, I mean, let's be honest, having a Segway assault brigade is kind of cool. One of the main things that we're going to be focusing on in our time together is how to get faster in terms of incident response and doing our digital forensics work. And part of the reason that we need to focus on this is that it's so vital. We are getting our teeth kicked in by the bad guys right now. And it is case in point of how this should be better. I would encourage you to check out a guy named Dr. Phil Polstra. I saw him give a talk last November at Secure West Virginia, also known as HackerCon, and it blew my freaking mind. He did a demo where he had 45 minutes to talk, and in that time, he did an entire timeline analysis on a hard drive, which is insane because normally it takes so much longer. So please take a look at the work that he's been doing. And it's kind of been informing what I've been trying to do and what we'll be trying to cover in this in the next couple weeks. Now, at the start of the class, some folks were saying, you know, how much PowerShell do I need to have in order to be good with PowerShell or be able to handle this class? The answer is you don't need much at all. These commands here are all you need, period, the end, when it comes to PowerShell. And this is part of the reason why this is a little anti-intuitive, but if you look at the books that are out there in terms of how do you use different programming languages, you won't find a whole lot of books about PowerShell. And part of the reason is that it's so well documented. These three commands here, right at the start right here, this the get help, this command will actually show you how to use the help file of all the systems. If you're Unix savvy, it may remind you a little bit of the man pages. The way you invoke it is you just simply do get-help and then a commandlet or some topic. So you could do get help and then like networking or file, and it will tell you the different objects or commandlets that are available for you on that particular subject. Now, in this case, here, let's see if I can get this working well. Okay, what are you seeing?
I see, well, I was seeing a
You were seeing some
PowerShell. Yeah, now you're not sharing.
Oh, were you seeing PowerShell?
Yeah, I was seeing a PowerShell screen and everything, yeah.
Okay, dang, I stopped it too early. Let's try that again. Demo gods are fearful creatures.
It's all right. Nothing yet.
Yeah, it's I got the little spinning thing going on right now. Okay, now you should be seeing a
There we go.
PowerShell screen.
Yep.
All right, so some things to point out here. Really, it's quite simple. Just get help, you know, type along, and you get the different help commands. Like I showed, get help file, it searches and it shows here's these different file commandlets that have to do with files. And in this instance, I have one for, I was showing you out file. So you do get help out file. By the way, PowerShell has nice tab autocomplete, which I'm a huge fan of. And so you simply do that, and you're going to see all the different components that it takes. But now, if this is all that PowerShell had, it would be kind of neat. But this is the reason why I do most of my PowerShell coding when I'm flying, because I don't need an internet connection to actually have good code. And here's why. You do get help out file dash examples, and it actually gives you multiple examples for how that commandlet gets invoked and what you can do with it. So basically, if you're a copy paste coder, kind of like I am sometimes, this is the best thing ever, really. So I'm a big fan of it. So, oh, hearing some issues about audio. Is everybody able to hear audio?
Some people said they had to restart and they were fine.
Okay.
But, I think we're good now. So.
All right, cool. All right, well, so hopefully that gets you at least a little bit of info about how you can use the help system of PowerShell. Now, one thing that I would encourage you to do is get in the habit of updating your help file. The way you do that is you just type in update help, like so, and then you'll see. Now, you have to do this as an administrator, and I didn't start as an administrator. So you get this nice error message. Wah, wah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of this one, and I'm going to run it as an administrator by right-clicking it. And you simply type update help. And then it goes online and it will actually pull the updates for you. So now for some folks, this is, basics. Ah, boy. Demo fails. Don't have network connection on this host. We will, let's swap over to this guy and see if that treats us better.
Yeah, all your VMs that you downloaded should have had natting at least, so you'd have network connectivity, right?
Yeah, that one was one that I was hacking on. Let me get that guy out of the way.
Okay.
For at least the time being. And now, fingers crossed, it's at least taking some time, so that's a good sign.
So would you be able to do a run as command as opposed to update the help file, as opposed to Xing out the window and running as administrator?
You totally could. I was just being lazy. Full disclosure.
No worries.
As you'll see, it's doing the updates. This is something that I like to do fairly often because there are new updates that come from time to time. It's not all the time, but it does happen enough that it's worth doing. So while that's running, I'm going to go back to our regularly scheduled programming here and go back to this slide deck. And I'm going to talk about the get command commandlet. What get command does is that shows you all the different commands that PowerShell has available to you. So it's quite the fire hose. Usually what you'll do is pipe it through some sort of find string or search parameter and allow you to narrow down what you want. And then the last one I want to talk about is git-member. Git-member is an incredibly powerful thing when it comes to troubleshooting your scripts, because sometimes a commandlet will be outputting things in a way that you're not expecting, or will be invoking things in a way that you aren't anticipating. So git-member will help you with troubleshooting. Git command and git member are ones that we're going to be talking about next week, though. So we'll just move right along. What I would encourage you to do is just jump in and start coding. The PowerShell community is super cool. I think we've all had those bad experiences with like uber elite Unix people who are like, hey, RTFM noob. PowerShell community is not like that. What I do have for you, though, that's coming up now are a series of cheats or pro tips that I wish I had earlier on, and these are things that were really painful for me to learn. And if you're versed in, or like well versed in PowerShell, you may be aware of some of these. If you're new, this is all going to be new, but you need to check out these sorts of things. First thing is you need to take a look at the PowerShell Gallery. The PowerShell Gallery is something we will be playing with multiple times throughout this class, or series of classes, because it's awesome. If you're a Python programmer, you may be familiar with PyPy or pip, those online repositories of Python. PowerShell Gallery is the equivalent thereof. And what it allows you to do is search online for already existing scripts that somebody has. Don't reinvent the wheel. In fact, really don't reinvent the wheel. Oops, let's go back here. What I want to show you is, so if we do find module, and then you have to do this name, and I realize that that name isn't popping up too much, but like, let's do forensics. We will actually find some different forensics toolkits. Power Forensics is one of them. There actually should, okay, come on, please work. So the question was, will we get the slide deck each week? You absolutely will. Why is it always, there we go. So here you go. These are the different frameworks that are already available that you can download and install. We'll play with that later. The pro tip from me to you is always do 2 checks. Number 1, check here on using the find module. If you're using PowerShell version 5, check here for code first, because that's the most widely adopted by the community. Then also check out GitHub. Those are my 2 favorite places to look. And then a third, just do a Google search, because you may save yourself from having to code things. And the reason that this is really important, especially from an incident response standpoint, is I will oftentimes find myself having to play around with, say, something like doing analysis on an Exchange server. And what I can do right here is find the different modules that are available within Exchange. So I can actually play around with some of the Exchange components. And in this case, the ones that I'm wanting would probably be the Exchange commandlets, which allow me to interact with an Exchange server in a very powerful and fast way. Again, things that we will delve into. Yes, sir.
I went ahead and I ran that find module on the VM, and it came up asking if we want to run something that you need to run something called NuGet.
Yes. So NuGet, great question. NuGet is the framework that actually allows you to have your PowerShell find module do an interaction with the PowerShell Gallery. So you want to take the answer yes there. Once you update that, then you will be able to get those updated results. If you hit no, you're going to have very weird interaction.
That NuGet also is a fairly powerful package manager for Windows. It's very much similar to apt-get for Windows. So it's like chocolatey-nougat.com or something like that. If you Google search for chocolatey nougat, then you'll be able to find that.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. Honestly, I'm having to kind of walk back some of my Unix elitism from back in the day, because Windows in some ways is getting a lot better than Linux. So yeah, let me know if you guys run into any other questions or stuff. I'm just going to keep on rolling along though. Okay. One thing that you need to really get, and this is something that I'm introducing now because I'm going to be talking about it over and over again. I am assuming that if you're paying attention to this class, you are doing it at scale. I used to work at a very large bank where we had 300,000 associates. So when I wrote scripts, now most of it was WMI and WQL, we had to be very, very tight in terms of how clean our code was. So be using tools like the measure command. And the way measure command works is really, really quite simple. It allows you to time how fast a particular command or script runs. And this is crucial because what I like to do is I will, here, let me show you how this works. It's really, really simple. So, oops. And then within PowerShell, if you've not played with it too much, you're going to see that there's these squiggle braces. Those are script blocks. So you're going to get comfortable with that. And then what we're doing here is we're going to actually measure how long it takes the command getDate to run. We're not actually going to see the result of getDate. See, here's getDate. It just tells us the system date. But measure command getDate tells us how fast that runs. One of the things that I find incredibly powerful to do is to make two different versions of a script and then run the measure command against those two different versions to find out which one is faster. And time matters, especially when you're talking, 300,000 hosts. Otherwise, you're going to be, running a command and it'll take, maybe days. We were able to, oh, I see people taking pictures. You will get the slides, so don't worry about that. But measure command is really worth its weight in gold. You're going to get very, very comfortable with this if you play around with PowerShell with any frequency. The other thing that I cannot overstate is this. PowerShell, in PowerShell, everything is objects. And if you try to use PowerShell like every other tool you've ever used, you're going to have a murderous time. It's going to be horrible. Things like STDOUT are not good. They're good for like troubleshooting and testing, but what you really need to use is have PowerShell writing to other objects, or have PowerShell writing to another script, or have PowerShell writing to files. Now, the main reason for this is quite simple. STDOUT just is too slow. You'll see a lot of times if you start playing around with the measure command and you remove any write host or output to STDOUT in your script, you will find that it runs in some cases, believe it or not, 10 times faster. So please do yourself a favor and get out of the habit of using STDOUT. Only use it for debug. So writing to files, really simple, right? You can just use the alligator mouths to pipe the file in. You can, but that's slow. You can use out-file, which is the official commandlet for it. But you can see I've got the little frowny face that is anti-intuitive. And if you're looking at that chart, you'll see something that's really weird, is that this stream writer, this system.io stream writer, is way, way faster. And the reason why is one of coding. What these first three options do, the alligator mouths, the out file, and then the export to CSV, what those do is that actually writes all of the data to a block of memory, and then it writes to disk. What StreamWriter does is it streams the write actions. So imagine you're doing analysis on a very large environment, and you wind up having a, I don't know, like 20 gig data set, which is actually very easy depending on the query that you wind up doing. If you aren't using StreamWriter, you're actually going to have to buffer to disk to deal with the just volume of data that you're dealing with. So StreamWriter is the way to go. And that TechNet article that I have listed below the table is actually the TechNet article where they say you really do need to use StreamWriter for larger data sets. Now, I'll be honest, I use OutFile or the shell redirects for just like quick hacking things together for proof of concept. But if you're doing anything at any size, you really need to get in the habit of using StreamWriter.
Does StreamWriter buffer something in RAM? Is that what the idea is? So it's a lot faster and then they'll write later?
No, so StreamWriter actually writes to the disk as it goes, whereas like OutFile, you have to generate the whole object, and then when you are done with that object, then it starts writing to disk. And so for small data sets, OutFile is way easier, or like real quick proof of concept. But yeah, StreamWriter, that's one thing that bit me hard.
Yeah. So Mick, I don't have a lot of experience with PowerShell. Could we go over a little bit of the command syntax first? I noticed you mentioned the curly braces, but where do you put that for the value of the command? I mean, maybe you could explain that a little bit better for me.
Certainly. All right, let's head back here.
Maybe something like, I think this is the idea. What is get date? Is that like the switch like in Linux? Could we how do we?
So the way it works is again, everything are objects in PowerShell, and whatever you put between these curly braces, like if you'll note on the prompt, it actually changes my prompt caret to this red. So this is actually a really cool hack, because if you see that, that means that you have a malformed statement. As soon as I close it off, it goes back to being good.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
It's I'll tell you this, I really like, if I had a hat, I would put it on and tip my hat to the PowerShell crew, because they did a great job of it. The idea is, you can have commandlets, you can have functions, you can have other items that take script blocks. So what I showed here in this one, this little example right here, is I'm running a command, this get date, as a script block, and then I'm measuring how fast it ran. I could do other things too, like I could check to see like how much CPU it took in terms of registers and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's with the, I think it's get counter. Let me double check on that one. Oops. Let me double check on that. Get help. Yep. So with get counter, like I can set up my different objects that I can measure for performance. So does that kind of answer your question or not? I don't know if I muddied things up or not.
I think that works fairly. I think that works. Yeah, that works.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries.
So basically what you're saying is that the curly brackets are basically commands within commands, or scripts within commands.
Yes. Yeah, that's a very good way of thinking of them. Now, the only thing where it's going to get a little, we're going to actually ratchet it up, and I'm glad we're having this discussion right now, because in a little bit we're going to be talking about the concept of script blocks. You can actually have a script block inside of a PowerShell script. And the concept of that is, just as you said, the commands within commands. You could have a series of tasks that are spun up in parallel using script blocks. It's something we're going to lightly touch on today, but we will get into, I believe we're going to be doing it on session 3, not positive. I don't have my full curriculum in front of me.
All right.
So does that make it a little more sensical?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Let's go back to the slides. So this, I wasn't kidding when I said it was very timely that we talked about this. Within PowerShell, you can have threading by having different jobs run as different script blocks. And this is really, really cool, because what you can do is spin off a series of requests against a remote computer, say like, tell me who's logged in, do you have this patch, and have you been rebooted in the last week? Maybe there's an emergency patch and you want to make sure that it's been applied and you're good to go. So if you have an uptime of over a week, you know that that patch hasn't applied. Well, what you could do is, you have 2 ways of going about doing this. You can either iteratively walk through the domain and have each machine tell you one at a time, like, hey, what's going on, and that'll work. But again, I'm used to working in very large environments, and that would be murderously slow. So it's more optimal to have a scenario where you're going to be running a command that says, hey, computer, here's a series of questions that I want from you. And then you move on to the next computer and make that query, and you go on to the next computer, and you wait for those machines to respond back. And we'll get into that on class 3 and 4 of this series on how to do this. The reason that I love to talk about this right now is you need to start thinking of using the measure command, because here's why. I was on an incident response where we had, I believe it was 60,000 hosts, and the initial block of code that we've found online and tweaked up a little bit for our needs took about 12 seconds per host, which honestly, not bad. But 60,000, it was horrible. What we wound up doing was we hacked on it, and it took I'd say like 3 or 4 hours. And after 3 or 4 hours of hacking and really performance tuning it, we got it down to being 0.12 seconds from 12. That's awesome. So one of the things that you need to start thinking about are things like the fail fast logic from WMIC. WMIC is a lesser known feature in Windows, and one of the components, one of the flags that it supports is /failfast_on. And what that does is it will actually ping a system and make sure that it's available before it will do any of the other work. So what I want you to start doing is start getting really aggressive and start getting really creative with how you're going to be doing your interactions with the hosts. We will start delving more into that. This is, again, just an intro on how things work. Another thing to talk about for speed is Windows has many powerful features, and I'll tell you this. The one that I really dig over Linux and Unix right now is how they do event logging. It's a totally different critter. What's interesting is within PowerShell, you can actually do some really, really freaking cool things. And I want to show you just how interesting you can do things within PowerShell. So let's drop over to this. So what I'm going to do is, and you can follow along if you'd like. Whoops, not command. Hold on, sorry. Control. Control is a shortcut to bring up the control panel. I'm going to go into my small icons, go into my administrative tools, and I'm going to go into the event viewer.
So in PowerShell, how does that compare to something like WEVTIL or WE Event Tool?
So it depends on how you're using it and what you're doing it for. So I like PowerShell better because it exposes so much more to you. We're going to go on, I believe, section 5. We're going to spend a day just talking about the WMI object class. And PowerShell does a lot and does it really fast in that regard. I don't know if that answers the question though, but one thing that I want to point out is, okay, so check this out. I can either open up my event log and look at it this way and make a filter on my current log, and what's the event source, what's the event ID for login events? 4624. Okay, now check this out. This is a really cool hack. We get this XML. Watch this. You have to hit Control-C. You don't get right-click here. I don't know why they do this for you like this, but so check this out. You can do XML equals, and this is a feature that we will go over a little bit later. This is an extended quote that I'm doing here, this @ single quote, and then I paste in my XML that I got right here from this this filter. Okay, so I hit Control-C, I go in here, I start my extended quote, and then I close my extended quote. And now, to make sure that I have the value correct, all you have to do is type in XML like so, and you can see here's the command that, or the value that I put into that variable. So now check this out. Get when, whoops, oh geez. I always have to be kind of gun shy on when you do tab complete on some of these commands. Filter XML, and now I type in XML, boom, and I've got the login event info for this machine just like that. Now you might be saying, well, but it's kind of slow. Remember what I said about how things are when it goes to writing to standard out?
Standard out is way slower, yeah.
Yeah, had I used like a stream writer, this would already be done. But I mean, how fast is this? It's baller. In fact, this is my preferred way of interacting with Windows hosts from remote, is using this sort of technique. So, and
could you
we'll
use StreamWriter? Could you use StreamWriter to output to the screen?
So, StreamWriter can write to anything that you want, which is kind of cool, depending on which circles you hang in. The problem that you'll run into is writing to the command prompt with StreamWriter. You're going to have the same I/O performance bottlenecks. It's really a matter of refreshing. Now, there might be some elite hack that allows you to stream to the terminal faster. I've not seen it. I've tried. I've had some really long flights where I got bored. So, okay. Yeah. But this is a really neat power up that should help make life a lot easier for you when you're interacting with Windows event logs. which you should be interacting with a lot as an incident response type person. The last one, and this slide, I want to give you a little bit of caution here. This is where we're going full on YOLO. You can actually do some pretty interesting things within PowerShell, including the process priority. I have a nice TechNet article there that will give you a PowerShell script that will allow you to very easily and repeatedly alter the priority in a fairly safe way. The only word of caution I'm going to give you is if you want to set it at 3, positive 3, which is the highest processor priority, make pretty damn sure you're not going to be needing that machine for a while, because that will be running at a super high level and you're not going to be able to interact with it terribly well. I've often found that just setting it to positive 1 is enough. So with all that said, let's talk about setting up your shop a little bit and making your PowerShell environment a little more interesting from the good guy and forensics side of things. What I've got here for you is a really cool hack that not enough people do, in my opinion. What you can do is set up a profile that will alter your PowerShell prompt. And what you do is you enter this first command right here, and this command will create a profile that is used when you log in to your PowerShell prompt. And then you can alter this profile by just simply using a text editor of your choice. In this case, I'm using Notepad. If you, and I want to be honest here, this next slide will be available to everyone. What you do is you copy paste the contents of this slide, and then you put this in your profile, save the profile, and then when you start PowerShell again, you're going to see something really cool happen. Let me show you how this works. This is one where I noticed that things got wonky during my system crash. All right, so let me show you this. Let's exit out. Now, what you're noticing, what you're going to see here when I start this PowerShell is I get this odd error that you probably don't have if you've not yet done this hack. You'll see that there's this odd thing where it says, hey, I can't run this PowerShell profile. The reason why is I'm running in a safe mode, which is I've got execution restriction policies enabled. So if I do get execution policy, I'm restricted, which is the default, which is good. That's a security thing. But what I want to do is actually have my profile script run, and just to show that there's no tricks or anything, Notepad. This is the same text. It's formatted slightly differently than that slide, but this is the same text that I had on that slide. Now, when I invoke PowerShell in a method that will bypass this restriction, so I do PowerShell, and I'm going to do a shortcut here, execution policy bypass. Now what happens is I get a different prompt, and I get a message saying that a transcript has been started. So what's cool about this now is every time I hit enter, I have the date time stamp on my prompt. This is really freaking cool from a forensic standpoint, folks. Please do yourself a favor and start using this, because this resonates with juries and other folks if you're ever in that situation. The other thing that's cool is that there's these transcripts now. So if I do things like, oh, I don't know, you know, so now what I can do is I can, let me exit out. And if you'll remember, I had that transaction script. So I can Notepad. then is that today's? No, it is not. Oh, no, what's going, oh, I see what happened. There we go. And now you actually have a transcript of all the commands that you enter. This isn't, I opened up the wrong transcript file, sorry about that. But you see all the commands that I entered and what output is displayed. So this is super cool from a forensic standpoint. Just pro tips from me to you.
So in Bash, you can tab to complete. Can you tab to do like command history or previous commands?
Yeah, so actually there's a variety of cool things that you can do from a history standpoint. Let me get a few things. So we got dir, clear. What you can do is you can actually do Control R. Oh, it's not going to let me work. Man. There's a demo fails. You can hit F7 and this pops up. This is a very handy thing. There is a way though to search through your history. I just don't know what it is. One thing that's kind of fun, this is a less useful mode, but sometimes if you get really comfortable with the F7, you'll notice that there's these numbers here. You just simply hit escape to make that go away. If you hit F9, you can enter the command number and it will re-execute. Oh yes, thank you, Marcus, the get history. And that pulls that too. Thank you so much. So yeah, that's how you can do that. Also, since you mentioned it, I prefer to actually use Audit D for tracking things on the Unix systems, but that's another series of classes, I suppose. So any questions on where we're at so far? No? Okay. Yeah, Control R worked on. Okay, so it worked on some folks, didn't work on mine. Demo gods were mean. Oh, one thing that I do want to point out. So check this out. A lot of folks have trouble with sizing their PowerShell prompt. There's a couple different ways that you can make it do full screen. The oldest school method, this is an old cmd.exe hack, is you type mode space 300, hit enter, and it will make your prompt be the full size of the screen. You have to slightly adjust things. The other way is you can hit alt enter, but my VM seems to be acting up a little bit. So other fun little shell shenanigans, as it were. So moving back to our regularly scheduled hackery, when it comes to preparation, you have to know what you're after in terms of gathering information and how fast you want to go, and do you need additional things? That additional things will make sense in a minute here. Some of the things that I find that I have to do a lot are finding files or changes that have been made to a system. We'll go over some frameworks and tools that you can use to do that next session. Being able to just see who logged into what machine on an enterprise is actually pretty freaking cool. One of my favorite things to do when I'm searching for pen testers is I will run a command that will tell me, show me all the users who have logged into a machine for the first time today. And it's a dynamite way of detecting lateral movement as things are moving around. You can also prep for if a file went walkabout. What I mean by that is you can turn on Windows File Access Auditing. And I know some of you are wincing. Windows File Access Audit has a bad rap. If you turn it on and you don't point to a specific directory and instead say do the C drive, you're going to have a horrible day because you're going to crush the operating system. Instead, what you need to do is be focused on a particular directory, and I'll show you how to play with that next week. The last one, and this one is where I'm going to get some of my brownie points back from the forensics crew, because a lot of the things we're going to be doing will dirty up the memory on a machine. Don't dirty up the memory on a machine. What you need to do is, if you're going to be interacting with a host and you think you might possibly maybe could potentially use that memory, grab it first, then do your analysis. The reason why is it is easy to go stompy through the memory, especially as you start doing things with PowerShell. You're going to be muddying up some of the network connections and things like that. So what you need to do with memory, and this is a very important thing to understand, PowerShell does not have the ability to interact with the full system memory. So what you need to have is some other memory capture tool, and we'll cover that, don't worry. But you need to have some other memory capture tool that's available to grab the RAM, and you can invoke that with PowerShell certainly, but you can't have PowerShell do the memory grab for you. So there's a ton of amazing frameworks that we're going to be going over in the next couple weeks. I'm a big fan of all of these, actually, and I think you will too. And another thing that you need to start getting prepped and get in your head is the concept of, even though this is a PowerShell class, really what we're going to be doing is a lot of baseline analysis. Because if you don't know what normal is in your network, you've got no chance of defending it. So it's a lot easier to use PowerShell or tools like PowerShell to grab what a base state is for a server and then compare and contrast. And then that way you can very quickly jump on the machines that have been altered in some way. So that's it that I've got for the prepared content, and I'm actually really good on time. So are there any questions, any concerns, any stuff? I know for some of you this was pretty basic. For others, this is your first foray into it. But this is just kind of to get your sea legs, as it were.
Yeah. Well, I should have, the first day of class for 504, they had like a Linux on the command line refresher that I probably should have went to. There was some good information I probably could have learned from that, but I didn't. I was later told there was a lot of good stories that Mr. Strand told, and a lot of good stuff like little gotchas that actually showed up on my 504 exam. So I probably should have gone to that. So it's good to learn the basics, even if it is a review, because, everything is basic to somebody or is not basic to somebody. So yeah, that was good. So anybody have any questions or thoughts? Shecky, Rue, Yvette, Woody?
Mick, what was get member again?
So
Can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. So get member is a command that, or a commandlet that allows you to interact with, here, let me, whoops. So here, let's eat our own dog food. Get help, get member. What get member allows you to see are the different components of things. So this makes more sense here in this context. Like, remember, we do the examples here, and what you see, it scrolls by too fast. Let's pipe that to more.
Okay, so there's a more version in PowerShell. Okay.
And so what you can see here is get service, in this example, is a thing that allows you to see what services are running on your host. But when you do get member, you actually aren't showing the services. Here, let's start another, let's start another PowerShell prompt, and you'll see the difference here. So when I do get service, You can see all the different services that are running and stopped on my host. Okay, cool. Don't hack me, bro. But when I do get member of that, what you get are the objects, the classes, and methods and properties that are affiliated with these responses. So see, name is here, name. I get member type. So I can actually see like what different components I'm dealing with on these particular objects. This is a really powerful way to make really troubleshooting a lot easier, because especially when we start playing around with the WMI objects, you will find that not all WMI objects are created equal. In some cases, and this is really mean, but there are some WMI objects that use different time values than other ones. And so things like get member help you understand what sort of time you're dealing with. I hope that answers that question.
Cool. All right. So any other questions from anybody?
Yeah, I got a question.
Do we have any homework?
Events?
Yeah, get win event. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Do you normally build your queries when you're looking through everything with that XML? Is that like kind of your standard procedure when you're doing that?
Well, so the question, do I normally use the XML to do that? I'll be honest, no. Usually what I'll do is I'll just use a regular string filter. The problem is it's a lot slower. That XML method is blazing fast. So usually I go through that if I know I'm going to be doing a large query set or interacting with a lot of hosts. That's usually when I bring that one out. But I find that I need that more often than not.
So Mick, you said you use StreamWriter a lot because it's faster. So you write to a file and then you look at the file later to find out the output, or do you tail the files for stuff as it comes up? I mean, how are you actually getting to see the output if you're not using standard out?
So that's a great question, and it really depends on the particular use case. To rephrase that, the question might be, when I'm doing things within PowerShell, am I often tailing my files that I'm doing, or do I write to the file and then look at it later? Mm-hmm. Usually what I find is, and maybe this is just me being a Unix guy from way back in the day, I usually take a couple series of actions, mm-hmm. and I generate intermediary files along the way so that I can show, the work that I've been doing. Mm-hmm. But I find it most helpful to usually run a command, get an output file, run another command against that output file, run another command against that output, and then at the end I have this very precise thing that I'm looking for.
Yeah. So
and usually I do that via a script. It's not like a iterative, type a command, wait for the output, type a command, wait for the output.
Mm-hmm. Will StreamWriter work if you were, say, taking the output from StreamWriter and piping it to something else, or is that much faster than even StreamWriter just piping to another command? Because I do that too. I chain, I'm looking for a file, I'm grepping for a certain thing, I'm cutting something, I'm, looking for a specific, character or string. I mean, chaining all those together is a lot faster than copying it to a file and then reading from that file and copying, right?
Well, it depends. So usually what I do is a bit of, why not both? Because remember, a lot of times I'm doing stuff where I need to actually have high quality evidence that might be needed later for court purposes. Right. Usually what I will do is I will chain the commands together, but I will also have just underneath them a command that is outputting the intermediary output so that I can show along the path where things are, what they're doing. It makes troubleshooting a little easier. The downside is I do chew disk at a pretty good clip when I do that approach. But you know, as a guy who does forensics and incident response, you know, I'm used to burning through hard drives and such at a much more aggressive pace than most.
Understood. So when
to
you're on an
precisely-
engagement, how big a drive should you be looking at? Should you be carrying around a couple terabytes worth of space just in case?
Yeah. Honestly, anything less than 6 terabytes now isn't worth carrying around, in my opinion.
God.
Well, hold on. I know we're living in the future, but if you go to, for those of you who are going to DEF CON or summer hacker camp, there's a data duplication village where they are encouraging people to bring 3 6-terabyte drives, and they will give them rainbow tables and a variety of other things. So
Like viruses and malware.
Well, that too. I mean, hey, welcome to Vegas, right?
That's very cool. Any other questions, comments, suggestions?
Great class.
Awesome.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so I will take the silence as being done with class. So that concludes the first session of the course here. We'll be back at our regular time next week for those of y'all who are attending the course. I will stop recording now. Before we go, please check out the podcast, BrakeSec, Breaking Down Security Podcast. We are at Bryan Brake, at BrakeSec, at BetYourPwned, and at InfoSister. You can find us at breakingsecurity.com, BRAKEING security.com. And we currently have a Slack, so you can sign up and talk about PowerShell with Mick and other people, and that's at brakesec.signup.team. All right, thank you.